What's up, YouTube? So today we're doing the 8-inch stretch with the Synergy kit. It comes with the control arms and brackets, and there's going to be a little bit of welding. There's going to be a lot of cutting. And first thing I'm going to do is put your Jeep on the frame, put it on jack stands, and then you can adjust the height of your rear axle with the jack. And we're also going to be putting on the 1-ton axle on the rear. And that's going to be a Sterling 10.5 inch. And that's the whole point of why we're stretching it, and we'll have a longer wheelbase. Alright. Alright guys, so we got the rear end out of here. And we leaked some differential fluid on the floor, so put down some kitty litter. Clean that up. Now we're going to go ahead and drop the fuel tank. This is for the Synergy 8-inch stretch. And you got to drop that fuel tank so you can put one of the new control arm mounts on, and we're going to have to weld it on. Alright, so we dropped the fuel tank, and you need to unplug this right here. I unplugged it right there. This one can stay in. And there's a plug that goes right on your fuel pump right there. And there's a couple plugs back here you're going to have to remove. And then you just have to take all the bolts out that hold it up, and it should come right out. I try to do it if your tank is closer to empty. Mine's 3/4 of a tank full, so I'm going to have to drain a lot of it out, put it back in. It's going to be too heavy. Alright, so the very first thing you want to do is cut off this lower control arm mount right here. There's welds right here. We're just going to cut along the welds, and we're going to grind them down and try not to cut into the frame. Then we're going to go ahead and cut it on the inside right here. Now we're going to go ahead and grind these welds down in a minute. Now we're going to cut off the upper control arm mount. We're going to cut right here and on the back side. I'm just going to use a big grinding wheel and just wear a face shield and be careful with it. But I would use a Sawzall, but mine's dead. Alright, so on this lower control arm, do the same thing we did on the other side. We're going to cut a line right through the bottom, cut that apart, and then we're going to hit it right here if we have to. Just take out a little bit of meat, and then right here too. And then we can put a crescent wrench on there and just pry it back and forth, and it should break right off. And the other side will do the same thing. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and cut off the upper control arm like we did with the torch last time. Once you get all those 4 brackets cut off, we're gonna grind all this stuff down right now. Alright, now we're gonna cut the body mount, and we're cutting it 1 1/8 inch below the very top. So measure from here to somewhere in there, and we're gonna trim that. Now we're going to go to the other side, do the same thing. Alright, that's off. So we trimmed it down 1 1/8 inch from the top. That's how long we wanted it. I just kind of marked it with a tape measure, then eyeballed it when I cut it, and I'm just going to clean everything up with the grinder now. Make it all nice and pretty. Alright, once you've got it cleaned up, you're going to take off this body mount bolt, and there's 2 nuts down there, and you take that off, and then your control arm mount should just go right into those holes like this. These 2 holes right here, like that, and then just put your screws in there and bolt it up. But first I'd put that on there, screwed them on, I drew lines, and I'm going to go ahead and spray some primer on here just to protect it. So I'm going to do that real quick. This is the body mount where the new control arm bolts up to, and you just want to take this off. So then you want to take this, put it up there like that, put these nuts in. Trace around it with the marker. Alright, so now we're installing our rear track bar mount, and this is just clamped up here right now, but you take your tape measure and you measure 8 inches back from the very front, from this side of the track bar, the original one, to this side of the new one. It should be exactly 8 inches. And I just got it clamped up there, and I'm going to go ahead and tack it in place. Should fit something like that. Alright, so now we're going to take these brackets and weld this on here. And if you have a body mount, you're not going to do this. And what a body mount looks like is be one of these things up mounted right where this thing needs to go. So we're going to put these on and just put them on flat ground and just weld around them and make sure that hole's facing the same direction as the tab is, like that. So you want it to sit in there just like that. Alright, now we're gonna, I tried to beat this nut out, leaving, alright, so now we're gonna take this nut that's welded to the back of this bracket for your shock mount. I tried to put the bolt back in there and hit it out with the hammer, but I'm just gonna cut it out with the torch because hitting it with the hammer isn't gonna work. Alright, now we're going to take off our exhaust hanger bracket. I already took off one of them. I already pulled out my exhaust muffler. So this is the muffler hanger bracket. Alright guys, so now we're going to do some cutting on a rib on the body, and it is right behind our original shock mount. This is so we can mount our new shocks. If you're running coilovers, this might be different, but I don't have coilovers. So I just drew some lines right here on the rib on where I'm going to try to cut at, and hopefully that will solve the issue. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to film this, but I'll try. Alright, so we cut it like that. I didn't even hit the backside, just those 1, 2, 3 cuts. Maybe somehow I'm gonna have to get back there and cut it through the back. I don't know how I'm gonna do that, but I'll figure out a way and I'll show y'all. Alright, so I just folded this down with my hand. Now I'm gonna take a cutoff wheel and try to cut it along there, and hopefully that'll be enough room. So in order to get that to work, I had to hit it with the hammer right here and beat it in, and hit it on this corner too with the hammer, and that gave me enough clearance after I marked it and cut it. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and put our coil spring mount in. Now that everything's pretty much ready to go on, pretty much everything has to get welded on or tack welded on and tested. But we're going to put our coil spring on. The only thing left we have to cut off are the bump stops and relocate those 8 inches back. Haven't done that. And then nowhere, it doesn't show anything about how to hook up the sway bar. At least I haven't seen anything yet. So I'll have to figure that out later. But I'm going to go ahead and tack these on. There goes something like that. So let's do that. That tab right here hangs off onto this side. And you push it all the way up against the frame. Now we're going to tack up our shock mounts. I don't know if I'll be able to do this by myself, but I'm going to give it a shot. And I already painted the backs of these too. But the shock mounts go where this comes flush with your previous shock mount, and that falls close to the corner of the weld that is the bracket for your shock mount on the other one. Alright, so we set our upper control arms to 26 3/8 from center to center, where the bolt hole goes through. And we went ahead and bought some 9/16 bolts for the frame side. We put those in because factory ones won't fit. So now we're just going to try to put it all together. you want this bend to go towards the frame on your upper control arms. We got that one pretty much in place, so we're going to go ahead and do the other side. Alright, so once you got all the suspension hooked up, what you want to do is take your jack and put it underneath the spindle over here. Put it underneath the spindle and jack it up pretty much till it starts to come off your jack stands or whatever you got holding it up. And just make sure that nothing rubs, like your shock's completely compressed and all that good stuff. And then that will tell you exactly where to put this bump stop. Right here, it says on just to move it back 8 inches, but I just put a couple marks right here so I know where to put it at. And then you do the same thing on the other side and just make sure your track bar and your shocks don't hit or anything like that. But now I'm going to take it all off and weld it out, and then I'll show you guys how to put it on. Alright guys, now that we got everything welded out, we're going to go ahead and hit it with some primer, and I use the Rust-Oleum red primer. I think that's the best rust preventive primer out there. Anyways, we're going to do that, and then I'm going to spray paint it with some black paint, try to blend it all in, make it look like this never happened. And this is what the welds look like. That's on the upper control arm mount. Lit it right there. On the bottom of it, up in there, and on the inside of it, as much as I could. It gets a really big gap, so I just stopped welding. And then we welded it right there. And underneath it too, right here. And then on these shock mounts, if your Jeep's lifted up really high on a jack or some lift, it's easy to weld them underneath, but I couldn't really get under there with my hood, so I welded it on top of it, and on the sides, and on the inside from underneath, and did the best I could on the inside from underneath it. And then this bump stop, it's not straight. If I ever want to change it, I can, but I'm just going to do that. They're not very hard to cut off and remove. And then on the springs, on the coil springs, I welded all along right here and on the other side, and then I put a little bit up there. I think that's all you're going to need for that. And the track bar, we welded all the way around it except for the inside. That was the very first thing we did. That was the only thing I could really film because it was in an easy spot. But yep, that's it. Like I said, I'm just painting it with that Rust-Oleum red primer. That's the color of it. And then we're going to end up painting it black. And if you ever want to use that primer, this is what it looks like. Hands down the best primer. This thing could stop rust from 2 miles away, I'll tell you what.